right, this morning we're into our second phase of our needles, jets, and springs in calibrating all the various aspects of our HS2 carburetors on this 1098 engine. And the very first thing that we're going to do is make sure that we've got our jets at the same height. So let's get into it. Okay, we've got our meter zeroed out. We're on millimeters. Going to raise this up a little bit so that it has the probe coming out the base of it, and then we simply insert that down the top of the carburetor where the jet would go, and then we lower that bar until it's flat across the bridge, and I get a 1.50, and then we'll do the same thing on the front carburetor here. And did I turn you off? I'll zero you back out again. There we go. Let's get you zeroed out. Those buttons are on the front, so they're real easy for me to mistakenly hit one of the buttons. So I've got the probe on top of the jet. We'll lower this down. And I get a reading of 0.86. Let me just kind of do that again, just to double check. Here we go. And I got a 0.87, so that's good. And let's do this one final time in the back here. And we're dropping it down. And I got a 1.4 that time around. So we have 1.5, 1.4. I think the bottom line here is that this back carburetor, yeah, I got 1.4. So I'm gonna average that. I'm gonna call it 1.5 back here and 0.9 back up here. One last time here. We say one last time after I turn it off. Yeah, we're at 89. So 0.9 and 1.5. So what that means is that this jet is lower than this jet. So I'm going to lean this one out until they're, I may just end up doing them so I get them at both at one. So that'll take a little bit of finesse, but that's what we'll try and do. And so I've got this little SU adjusting nut tool. It's just on my keychain, which keeps it nice and handy. And so I'll use that to give those nuts just the slightest bit of turn. It shouldn't take much on either one of them. And we'll see if we can't get them synced up. This is about where we're at, 971, 101. We're right in this vicinity on both of the jets. So we're going to call that good. Certainly a good starting point. I'm going to go ahead and put the dash pots back in and see how she starts. Now that we've got the jets, the jet level set, let's take this out. Little test drive, not necessarily a test drive, but just to kind of warm up the engine. And let's get the carb synced. That's good on a nice cold start. The first step in synchronizing the carburetors is to make sure that we've got a disconnect between the two carburetors so that we can individually set the idle on those. And so I'm just using I think it's a 5/16 nut driver, and slackened off the nut. It's kind of like this one over here. Just slacken that off so that when I move the throttle, you can see one is moving back and forth, but this one isn't. The one on the right is not. So we know that we can independently adjust the fast idle screws right here on each carburetor until they are in sync. What we're the process that we're trying to get to is that the twin carburetors, the dual carburetors, are acting as a single unit. So we've already set the jet height to be basically identical on the two of them, and we need to do the same with the butterfly, that they are drawing the same amount. And the process of doing that will require that we use some sort of a flow meter, whether a unison or a unit similar to this. And what we'll do is we'll get the engine running, and we'll move the flow meter from carburetor to carburetor until we get a similar or identical number reading on the scale. And then we know that both carburetors are drawing at the same rate. We'll lock down that set screw on the linkage, and we can move on to the next process. So let's get the engine fired up and give it a try. Okay, we've got the engine up to operating temperature. So we're just going to take an initial reading. Put that down at the carburetor, and I am getting looks like my needle is about 5.5 on the front carburetor. We're only drawing about 2 on this back carburetor. So let's crank this. So we're about 5.5 on that now. See what we're doing here. And we're about 5.5 on that. So let's double check this again. All right. So let me turn the engine off. can tighten down that linkage and we're set to go. One of the, so you'll notice that the idle increased as I was doing that. So we got to about, it was about 900 RPM going from the car's tachometer. And so we're going to leave it right there. Of course, I'm going to lock down the linkage. And I'm gonna wait for, we've got a new set of red springs coming in today. And before I do any more adjustment on the carburetors, I'm going to wait until I kind of measure those springs, get them installed, and then we'll set up the carburetors using the, presumably, the new red springs. Well, as it turns out, my red springs have not arrived yet. So while I've got the dash pots off, I thought I would take this opportunity to make sure that the pistons are actually in the right dash pot. Over the years, these have come off and on. People have got things kind of mixed up where they went to the front or the back. Did this piston get put into that dash pot? And they're really very tightly machined. So I have done this once before, this process once before on my H1 carburetors, the original style carburetors that would have been on a Bug-Eye, but I've not done this on the HS2s, which is what I'm going to do today. So there's very little equipment necessary to do this. I'm going to move the springs out of the way over here. I've taken out the springs, obviously the dampers. I've drained the oil from the cylinders, the pistons in here. And so that's all prepped. Other than that, the only other tools that you really need is pretty much just some painter's tape. And in my case, I'll kind of go into this in detail, maybe just a little screwdriver and a small washer and bolt to prevent this piston from extending out beyond the base of the upper chamber. Now, with the spring damper removed, this is what's going to happen. You can see that this will slide down into the chamber, and there's what they call a drop test, and we can actually time to make sure that this is falling or rising at the, it'll actually, in the car it'll be like that. You can kind of time that to make sure that the tolerances are good. For my purposes today, I just want to make sure that the pair of these are dropping at approximately the same rate. Remembering that what we're trying to do at this stage is to make sure that each of the individual carburetors are acting the same, so that in essence, once things get locked down, they'll act as a single carburetor. Now, the way SU carburetors work within this chamber is as the engine revs, it creates a vacuum, and these pistons will rise and fall within the dash pot, and then of course that rise and fall is reflected in the needle and the jet, giving more or less gas. So it's quite an ingenious design. Now, the way that vacuum or airflow is creates that suction is through these two holes on the top. So for our test, what we're going to do is we're going to block those holes, and we'll do that with painter's tape. So I'll do that now. Okay, so you can see now that with this washer protruding slightly into the area where the piston is, it's going to prevent it from from actually falling out. And this will allow me to gauge both of the pistons dropping at the same time and dropping the same distance. So let's go ahead and demonstrate how that is. Let's find out if they drop the same or if they need to be adjusted, actually swapped over, which is about the only way you can adjust these. Okay, so let's give this a try. We've got our 2 dash pots. Maybe I'll bring them in right about here, and I'll try and drop these simultaneously, and we'll see if you can hear the click. Okay, so the one on the left is dropping ever so slightly slower than the one on the right. You can hear that click. So what I'm going to do for purposes of this experiment is I'm going to switch pistons within the dash pots and see if that makes it better or worse. Before I make the swap and things get a little bit confusing, I've marked them front and rear, and I've marked the pistons front and rear so we know their original position. All right, now we've got the pistons swapped. Let's see if there's a improvement or if they got worse. So we'll let them drop. Okay, so we can see that the rear dash pot with the front cylinder in it, I'll drop those one more time, is dropping significantly slower once we drop those down. So we're going to return these back to their original position because that's the best. But that does demonstrate that if you get these pistons swapped into different dash pots, you can have a significant effect on how fast and slow your pistons will rise, which affects your fueling. Okay, well, we're moving right along with all the verification and measuring. Very important on our cars to, if you never test these things, you just don't know. And you're kind of fighting various problems, and you may find out as we've already kind of marched through, is were the jets not equal? Were the butterflies not equal? Were the pistons within the dash pots, were they not rising and falling at the same rate? And of course, ultimately, we're going to go back and test springs to make sure that our spring rates are also within spec. And once we do that, we now know that we've done all of the mechanical things that differentiate those two independent carburetors so that they act as one. So we're still waiting on the red springs. I've got I have another testing method for testing the new springs and the old springs, and we'll get into that in the next episode of this process of needles, jets, and springs.